All right, we'll start this slideshow here.
All right. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Steve Mahoney. I'm with Kathleen Thompson. We are mentors with the Greater Hartford chapter of SCORE. We are joined today by Mike Rizkalla, who is the CEO of Snorble, and Mike is going to be taking you through crowdfunding tips to kickstart your business. Mike, we'll turn it over to you.
All right, thank you so much, Steve and Kathleen. Thank you for having me here, and thanks for everyone for joining. Looking forward to kind of walking you through some of the learnings that I've had. And please feel free to ask any questions. Now, I don't have the Q&A box up because I have full screen on my presentation here. But if you do have questions, maybe Steve and Kathleen, you could just pipe up and interrupt me. Does that sound good?
We will.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about crowdfunding. So here's an overview, right? There's two different areas of crowdfunding. There is crowdfunding for investment, which is, around actually people actually purchasing part of your company. And then there's also crowdfunding around pre-sales, right? Now, if you're looking at investments, right, it really depends on which stage you're at and what you're looking to do, right? You can use crowdfunding for investment for things like the methods that you would use or the vehicles you would use are safe agreements, convertible loan agreements, or selling shares directly into a company. For pre-sales, there's a lot of different things that you can do. One, you might be at a stage where you just have an idea for a product, or you might have a physical prototype, or you might have tested a product within market and are looking to really give it legs, right? So depending on what you want, pre-sales are great, and they can also help, obviously, with investment as well, too. So here's a list of the two different categories that we have with some pretty well-known platforms. Start Engine is a really big one, for example, on the investment side. They have had companies raise anywhere from 80 plus million dollars to $50,000, depending on what your needs are. Then we also have Yield Street and Fundrise, again, both investment platforms. And what you would do is you would go create a profile and then post your profile and then market it to individuals in order to get them to come in and invest. For pre-sales, we have the obvious ones that many of you probably already know, Kickstarter, which is the biggest one, same as Start Engine, those two the biggest. And then we have Indiegogo, which is also very, very big and pretty close to Kickstarter. And then GoFundMe. And GoFundMe, in general, is more thought of as a way for people to raise funds around anything, whereas Kickstarter and Indiegogo are primarily for product companies or companies looking to sell something specific. So, when you think of a direction, and we had to do this too, right? You have to really think about what kind of value you're trying to present to investors. For example, if you're on the investment side, you have to decide that. You have to say, well, what kind of value are we going to present to investors in order for them to invest, right? And then, what you really, really want to think about is that as you present that value, it's really about them understanding the risk and also the return on investment, which sounds very basic, but the truth is that that is probably the most complex of the conversations you'll have with an investor. They have to trust that you and your team are able to do this, but also that there's a big enough market. And if they put in their money, the likelihood of success is pretty good, even though it is still a risk, right? For pre-sales, we have, you have to basically, you're using pre-sales as a way to kind of prove the market. So it's about how you decide to present the product, testing your messaging, testing your approach, testing to see if people even want it. Sometimes you find, as we did, you learn things. You learn things through the process and through both methods. One thing that I think is really important when you think about choosing a direction or even applying a direction is it is an ongoing learning experience. You're going to adjust and adapt as you go. So things you should consider, right, when you're making this decision. So what stage of development is your product or company at? If you're an early stage startup and you're in the idea phase, it's sometimes it's easier to get investment than it is to actually sell product, right? Because if people trust you, they may be more inclined to give you a shot. Now, even with that, the stages that you would look at for those types of activities, especially for crowdfunding, is People that typically invest in you when you haven't just an idea are people that know you. And that becomes much, much harder in order to convert a transaction if they don't. So it doesn't mean that it's impossible, and it doesn't mean that you shouldn't try for it. What it does mean is that you have to be really aware of the challenge that you're facing and invest in the way to help invest in a way that helps overcome that challenge, right? So depending on the stage, are you looking to do pre-sales or crowdfunding? So here's another thing to talk about there. Um, when you think about pre-sales, something that we did was we basically started our pre-sales campaign on a high fidelity prototype. And the act of taking that prototype through design for manufacturing and then to market is an enormous lift, right? If I had my time back, would I have done it the same way? Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. I probably would have maybe went a little bit later. But the idea of using that as leverage in order to close investment is very, very powerful. So for us, for example, we originally intended to raise $500,000 on our friends and family round, and we raised $1 million. Great, right? We took that capital and we made the high fidelity prototype and we launched an Indiegogo, right? When we did that, we actually ended up raising another $2 million at that stage based off of the successful campaign that we had. So that was part of our strategy. And I think that when you think of crowdfunding, you really have to think of it as part of your strategy. It's not meant to actually fund your company, which is something that most people don't realize, especially for pre-sales. Now, for investing, it's a little different, right? Investing is about actually bringing in the capital to take another step to get to the next stage, to then potentially either do it again or to be self-sufficient, right? So when you're looking at that as an approach, you have to really decide which position you want to take, but both are going to take investment in time and money to be successful. So what is your motivation is a big consideration. Like, is it sales? Is it revenue? Are you trying to prove that you have a market? Are you trying to raise capital, right? And, again, I don't see them as mutually exclusive. They actually can operate in tandem together. But when you think about your motivation has to suit the outcome that you want. And that is a big challenge. And we'll talk a bit more about that later, especially when we think about how the platforms are set up and what your opportunity and how you will leverage the capital that you bring in to take another step. It's not quite what most people expect. The other thing you have to ask is, will your audience buy or invest on this platform? And this is a big consideration that most of us don't look at when we're picking the platform. So, for example, when you're thinking about going on Kickstarter, the demographic is primarily male at a certain age group with a certain level of income, right? Are those your customers? If they're not, it could be a great medium for you to collect transaction, but you won't get much value of leveraging that community. So will your products interest their members? Well, that's the other part of that too, isn't it? Right? So if they're not going to buy, there's no point, right? And why not sell and market direct to customers via your own site? So this is another interesting thing. I've seen this actually happen quite a bit with niche companies or with companies that have a very specific audience that already have an established community. You do give up a percentage to these platforms. So before deciding that you want to go on a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo, you have to kind of say to yourself, do I have the opportunity to do this on my own? Or do we have the mechanics in order to do so? Because you'll make more margin, right? If you're going to go direct, what are some rules and considerations? So here's a good one. For example, if you're doing like a pre-sales campaign and you're selling a product to individuals that you don't have manufactured yet, well, when you do that, typically most of the credit card companies don't allow for you to take money in without shipping a product. You could get banned. That's one thing. On the investment side, for example, if you're using promotions to sell equities, well, that's illegal. You could go to jail for that. And most people don't even realize that those are some of the challenges that you face. So the benefit of using a platform is a lot of that stuff's already buttoned up. They're not going to let you do anything that's going to get them in trouble, let alone get you in trouble. Um, However, you are paying for it. So we decided to focus on pre-sales, and that's what we did with our company Snorble. And I don't think I mentioned what Snorble was, so I will tell you what Snorble is now. Snorble is a child development system where we brought an adorable character to life in order to inspire children. And what we wanted to do was we wanted to prove that we had a market, right? So when we raised that $1 million, we basically launched our crowdfunding campaign. And from there, we actually did prove we had a market. Now, with that said, you don't see the graphics here. We actually narrowed it down to 2 platforms, which you won't see it on the screen here. We narrowed it down to Kickstarter and Indiegogo, right? And let's talk about the elements of a campaign. Oh, and sorry, we picked Indiegogo as our primary platform. And the reason why we picked Indiegogo, before I jump into the screen, the reason why we picked Indiegogo was they actually did a lot of things that were really good for us. They really paid attention. I think I have a slide later that kind of talks a little bit about that. But that's kind of why we decided to go with them. Was it the right choice? Maybe. Was it the wrong choice? Maybe. Not sure. But we believed it was the right choice at that time, and we jumped in head first. So let's talk about the elements of a campaign. Oh, there's a question. Let's see what the question is here. Oh, Snorble, great name. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, don't worry about it, Mike. We'll just monitor it so you don't have to be distracted.
Okay, no problem. So elements of a campaign, right? So first off, you need to prep, right? You need to have a clear goal for your crowdfunding. What is it you're trying to do, right? You need to understand the audience demographics you would like to reach. So how old are they? Where are they? Where do they exist? Well, what kind of income do they have? Is it male or female? Is it family? Do they have kids? You know, those types of things. And by really understanding your audience, it actually increases the ability to succeed. I would also highly recommend looking at similar products on the platform that are successful, so you can get guidance from how they're doing it, right? And even more so, talk to the folks on those platforms. Talk to the people running the campaigns. The more prep that you do up front, the better off you're going to be, right? Now, this is really important. Understanding which each of the crowdfunding platforms have to offer. There is the mechanics of the the finances. So yes, they take percentages, and yes, here's how they handle credit card transactions, et cetera, and all those types of things. But it also is about how you can leverage those communities to also be successful, and also what internal marketing programs they have, because they do. Typical to if you advertise in Google or Facebook or any of the social platforms, or Meta now, Meta, what happens is that you have to understand the mechanics of that, and also what those opportunities are. These platforms are no different. They're actually like little micro communities that you're basically accessing, right? And then you want to basically validate that your offer is somewhat unique on the platform. You're not just doing the same thing that somebody else just did, right? Even if it is successful, the challenge later becomes how you can push and drive your product for growth, right? So as well, the other thing you have to take into account is messaging. So your messaging has to be clear and concise, right? You want to write a script for your campaign video. That is probably the most important piece, are the visual assets and the campaign video around either or, whether it be equity or pre-sales, right? So you really want to focus on writing that script. And I would talk with customers, friends, and family and walk them through the script in order to kind of get the best intel that you can before you take another step. Now, That doesn't mean that you shouldn't use a marketing agency. I mean, like that would make sense. We've used different marketing partners as well to prep our Indiegogo page, as well as to also help write the script and to film the video. So those are all things that you can expect, but it also doesn't mean that you can't do it yourself. If you really, really focus hard on making it a rich experience and really getting the value proposition across, you can get there. The other thing to take note is don't rush anything. It's not a race. At the end of the day, you want to make sure that that the work that you've done has the impact. So take the time to invest in prep, research, and planning in order to truly be successful. So let's talk a little bit more about the collateral, some of the things that you might need, right? So obviously product photography in the right settings, in real settings, is really valuable. It's not just about taking photos of the thing that you're using. It's also about putting it into real life situations. And that's even the same thing for equity crowdfunding. It's the same thing. You need to kind of give people a context of how this thing is real and why people will use it. The campaign video, again, I think is probably one of the most important things that you can leverage. The campaign video in itself, when you make it, you should be thinking about making it obviously for digital marketing, but also how you can take snippets and pieces of that video in order to really expand and extend the reach of your film shoot. So part of it is when you go through the process of filming, you want to basically have an outline of all the different ways you're going to use the media and try to maximize it as best as you can. The other thing is casting. Most people don't realize this, but casting is hugely important. If you're looking at trying to get someone or trying to convince someone that you have something of value, you really want to make sure that the people that are in your promotional video are people that you would want to work with or be a part of or have interest in, that they give you a special feeling, and that's really important. You also should, for whether it be equity crowdfunding or pre-sales, watch a lot of videos, not just one or two. Watch a lot and try to kind of map out the formula that attracts you. Like if you see something, you're like, man, I really love this, and you put together a bunch of videos that you really, really love. When you go through that exercise of watching and analyzing it, you're going to take back a lot in terms of the value that you can get from that. And you should be mapping out the things that you really like highlight points or the flow. It starts off with an intro, then an overview of the product, then product in real life settings, then, so you can actually map those things out from a high level to see how others are doing it, and then apply some of those same principles for your own video in whichever area that you want to work with, right? The other thing to take note of is it needs to be informative from the start. Like when you have someone online, here it says 30 seconds, but the truth is that sometimes you only have 6 or 7 seconds to catch their attention. So you got to really think about how you want to have a longer narrative, but then also how you might want to create another touch point, which is the first point of contact if you're going to market this out on, Meta or whatever. So marketing and media, just because you launched a video on crowdfunding does not mean that your job is done. So I want to tell you what we did. We had 2 people on opposite sides of the world talking to every single person that basically commented on our crowdfunding campaign. And those 2 people were operating 24 hours a day. So anytime something pinged, they were ready to go. And the way that helped us was it actually produced over 5,000 comments on social, right? And we had over 2 million points of interaction, right? So when you think about that, was it 2 million or 2? I'm sorry, I'll make sure I got my numbers right there. It was a lot of points of interaction, basically. So so we leveraged that. We leveraged that to extend the reach. So as people were talking, it created it would start showing up in their feeds. So if you imagine 5,000 comments, that's 5,000 people that now a Snorble related post showed up in their feeds, which exposes us to millions of people, right? So part of this is to carry on the conversation, but to do so in a way as a good citizen. You know, not everyone's going to like your product. Not everyone's going to have an opinion you agree with. When you deal with products or even services or even your company overview, right? What you have to realize is that it's your job to make sure that they like your company and your product. It's not your job to fight and argue. So what you want to do is you want to really, really listen. And even if you don't agree, that's okay. But you listen anyways, and you take down the points that you think are important. If things come up repeatedly, you know that there's probably a hole in your marketing collaterals or in your deck, you know. So you also need to, once you create all these assets and have all these conversations, obviously, you will need to actually market. So like posting to social media with ads is incredibly important. And the act of how that works is that there are a series of touch points. So you know, I want to bring up a point here just in terms of how we consume or buy things, right? We actually don't buy things off just seeing one ad. Very, very, very few people do that. Those are mostly early adopters. They're typically power consumers, right? But a lot of people, what happens is you may have to see things a few times in order for you to decide, huh, I think I want that, or I may want that, or maybe that's good for my family, right? And those are called touch points. So what you want to do when you create a funnel for advertising is that you have your top level funnel, your medium funnel, and your conversion bottom of the funnel, right? And the people that come in at the top are kind of looking. Then they retarget them, and then they retarget them again, right? And hopefully, what happens is that you filter out the non-customers, but then when you get down to the bottom of the funnel, they actually turn into customers. And sometimes that takes a few times with a few different messages in order to get them there. So part of the approach is understanding I've got 7 seconds to say, huh, that's interesting, right? Now I got another 7 seconds to be like, well, geez, that's a pretty good value proposition. Now I got another 7 seconds to be like, huh, you know what? This feels like it might actually fit my family, right? So by the time you take them through those steps, what you actually have is you're converting them into a customer through a digital conversation. And that's really the purpose of those ads, right? Which a lot of people don't get. So I think that's good for that one. Let's go to the next slide. So weighing out the options. Okay. So when we looked at, oh, this should have been up higher. Sorry about that. When we looked at Kickstarter and Indiegogo, right, here were some of the metrics that helped us make a decision on which one we wanted to go with, right? So in Kickstarter, there was 23 million subscribers. So it was actually higher by, 8 million subscribers than Indiegogo. The demographics were exactly the same, pretty much. However, Kickstarter was less personable because it was bigger and more established. Whereas Indiegogo, like we talked with executives there who really paid attention to us and made us feel welcome, right? We were not able to negotiate a launch program at the start for Kickstarter. We were brand new. However, for Indiegogo, they actually gave us a full, almost like a mini marketing program within their community to help test to see how we would move, right? And then the other thing to take note of was like, for example, Kickstarter, you actually have to have a physical product, right? That is ready to be commercialized already, right? For Indiegogo, you could actually have an idea, like nothing made, and still go out to get funding. Those are huge differences, right? So imagine if you had an idea for a book. You didn't have to, do the whole book. You don't have to come up with all the illustrations or the full narrative. You can put in a sample and then pitch yourself and make yourself very, very attractive to investors for Indiegogo, for example, where they would put in or pre-sales, sorry, where they would put in or buy the book in advance because they like that snippet that you wrote. So you can't do that on Kickstarter. And that's actually a huge difference in terms of the approach. Now, here's the finance part. 8% is paid out to Kickstarter for every sale, 5% fee, plus 3% for credit cards. Same thing on both sides. Now, here's the thing that they don't talk about, and this is important. When you calculate this out, if you sold $100,000 worth of product, we actually sold 200,000 when we ran our Indiegogo campaign. When you sell $100,000 worth of product, you'd think that you'd only pay out 8%, $8,000, right? However, the thing that they don't promote and something that you really have to take in consideration is when there are returns or, for example, someone cancels an order, but they've already processed that transaction, you are going to pay that 8%. So that 8% actually works out to be closer to 10 to 12%, depending on how quickly you can get out the product and how few returns or cancellations you get. There are some questions. Okay. So let me just take a look here really quick.
We'll hold them till the end.
Okay, no problem. Okay. So on the Indiegogo campaign that we ran, we did $193,000, right? So you can see very successful campaign. We did that in 20 days. And some of the things to take note is that we did a ton of research leading up to that. Let me see what comes up next here. Oh yeah. So let me explain to you what we did here. For the Indiegogo campaign, in order to prep for that, we had a vision and a concept, right? We talked to a lot of families, a lot of moms, a lot of dads. We started to look at some of the competitive analysis. We did a consumer profiles. We did our audience definition, right? We looked at what would be points of differentiation between existing products and our product, right? And we did all that as part of our approach to come up with our unique value proposition. So that was all at the beginning. Then, before we even ran this campaign, we launched an independent market research study. And that independent market research study, in part, was to help with investment, for sure, because we had a lot of questions that were hard to qualify without having some form of support from a document like that. The second thing, though, was it helped us inform to us what our first go-to market would be. So in the case of Snorble, we had Imagine a Better Bedtime, right? So Snorble, Imagine a Better Bedtime. We started off focused solely on sleep and the sleep routine, because as we talked with more parents and we listed a series of different challenges that they were facing, we noticed that many of them were deeply troubled by trying to get a toddler to sleep. That was a huge area of concern and trouble. So while Snorble's a child development system, we focused on one thing to push out to market and one area to really drive the sales of the product, right? Now, we talked about other things, and the video was a big array of different things. But in order to kind of capture the attention of the families, we needed it to be short enough and direct enough in order for us to give the message, but also in order for the folks on the other end, the folks actually seeing the ads, to understand and then be able to quickly act on. It also allowed us to do something else too, because when you think about marketing, it really is about funnels, right? So the wider you are, the more money you spend. The more narrow you are, the more focused you are in terms of your spend. And also the higher the conversion, right? So by saying sleep, we could look for parents that were looking at how to get a toddler to sleep, or looking at sleep aids, or whatever other products that exist that would be competitors. And it was very direct. And that's how we were able to do $200,000 in sales in basically 20 days.
So Mike, it's Kathleen. I have a question just for clarification.
Yep.
You're saying you had this prototype built and you had one or something, and you didn't really have enough money to build a ton of them in advance. And that's why you went the crowdfunding route. So what you were doing was selling them in advance to people, and they were paying you up front so that then you could afford to go get them manufactured wherever they got manufactured.
Sort of. Yes, that's true. That is true in the sense that we didn't have like, so let me give you the spectrum, right? For pre-sale specifically, unless your product is super easy to manufacture, you've already got all that stuff mapped out, you know what the price point is, you know all that stuff. And then you have a way to do it very quickly. It's really not about getting capital to support your business. It's actually more about proving out that the concept will work. That is the most successful way to look at crowdfunding. And that's something that not a lot of people talk about. If you're trying to leverage it to support the operations of your business, it's a lot harder because remember, you're losing 12% at the front, right? So if it's $100, you got, 88's gone, right? And then the other thing to note is that you still have to pay for the product and you're paying for the marketing. So when you see the breakdown, it's coming up a bit later, you kind of see how to work it. So what we used it for, and I think this is a better approach strategically, is that we raised a little bit of money, we made the prototype, right? Then we had to prove that we had a market, right? So we did the independent market research study, and that helped us prove a first point. But research is research, right? Until you bring something into the market, it's not real. You can take it as points, but it's not going to give you a full picture on the reality of selling that product. So when we brought it to market, we tested all the theories that we kind of outlined in our market research study, but also our product theories. Like, hey, this is a brand new type of product. It's got a whole new perspective. How are we going to talk to customers? And the things that we learned were so valuable, right, in that process. And then we took all that learning, the fact that we sold $200,000 worth of product in 20 days, the fact that we had raised $1 million before and we were successful in doing these steps, and then we went and raised $2 million, right? Which actually was the capital that helped us move towards manufacturing and getting the things ready to go.
Got it. So your Indiegogo campaign did not raise all the money needed to
Oh,
fund the manufacture of that
no, like,
number of products that you pre-sold.
oh, Kathleen, that's a great. So let me tell you how much we raised before we shipped, right? So we raised $7.5 million before we shipped, and we actually spent closer to $9 million or $9.5 million before we actually shipped, right? And that is what it takes for this type of product to bring it to market. Now there are simpler things, right? But simpler things have more competition. So these are where some of you have to factor in your decision making. Like if you make something that is truly unique, it's easier to protect. But it's also usually more costly to launch, right? And not all the time, but usually, right? Because you have to go through the process of figuring out how to make it into the thing that you're going to make it. Whereas other things that previously existed, there's a framework to work off of, right? So those are all things you have to take into consideration. I really believe the best strategy for this type of program is to understand that it's not going to support your full business. Most likely, I'm not saying for everybody, but most likely. So what you do is you look at it as a way to help advance the business. And that's a great aspect. Now, on the equity crowdfunding side, maybe you can. Like, there's a great company that I actually have invested in myself called Nightscope, right? Nightscope had raised over $80 million on Start Engine. $80 million. No independent, like no institutional. I'm sure they had some institutional capital, but everything went through Start Engine, right? So it was individuals that they just kept convincing that they had a fantastic company and a fantastic product, and it was worth investing in, right? That company, if they were to go institutional, most likely wouldn't have been able to raise anywhere near that capital. They raised $80 million before they shipped their product. It's crazy, right? Now they did have prototypes. They spent a lot of that money, prepping and doing the things, right? But you have to think about those types of opportunities and how they're set up. So that's the difference between the two platforms and the two approaches.
Thanks.
No problem. So with that said, I want to show you our campaign video because I think that that'd be worthwhile for people to see. So does that sound good? Yes? I am going to show it. Hey, I'm Mike Rizkalla, CEO and co-founder of Snorble. Snorble is our one-of-a-kind sleep companion for children, an animated character brought to life that delights kids and lovingly inspires them to develop healthy sleep habits and more. Because the habits we love are the habits we keep. Snorble allows you, the parent, to develop and customize your child's bedtime routine, eliminating drama and replacing screen time with quality time. Snorble gives you expert advice and helps you establish routines that lead to healthy sleep habits. None of us want our child to wake up scared, and Snorble can help with that.
No, I had a bad dream.
It's okay. I'm here with you.
In the morning, Snorble will gently wake your child at a time of your choosing.
Good morning, buddy. It's time to get up. Wow, I slept really good. I hope you did too.
Oh,
Snorble helps kids establish these healthy habits early, habits that will have a positive effect their whole lives.
Dance party.
With your permission, Snorble can encourage physical activity, engage with learning activities aligned to key developmental milestones,
Fast. Ready? Go.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah.
and sometimes fun, just for the sake of fun.
Check out my fish face. Can you make one too?
Our team created Snorble to put your child at the center.
Much of the lullaby was covered in ice cream, chocolate fudge, cherry.
As parents ourselves, we know you're the most important person in your child's development. That's why we created Snorble to put both your child and you at the center of the experience. You can customize everything with our mobile app, where we offer you helpful advice from child development and psychology experts. With your customization and Snorble's fun, engaging approach, playtime and bedtime can be quality time for you and your child. The bedtime experience puts Snorble ahead of anything else. And there's more.
Taking a big, big breath.
Snorble teaches kids yoga,
Let it slowly out.
meditation,
Close your eyes and let's picture a rainbow. It's the prettiest rainbow in all of Lullaby.
and educational games.
Let's play the color game. I'll show you some colors and then you tell me what they are. What color is this?
Yellow.
Daytime fun.
Let me see you play some air guitar.
It tells stories.
I'd like to tell you the story of how the Rainbow River came to be. It's a story that's been passed down to all the Snorbles for as long as the Marzipan Mountains have been growing strong and mighty in Lullaby.
Everyday routines like brushing their teeth,
Wow, you just brush your teeth 10 nights in a row.
and putting on pajamas become fun
3,
because Snorble turns them into magical experiences. We made Snorble safe for our family and yours. Your kids can take it outside. It only needs the internet for updates when you approve. Snorble is designed to love your kids,
you love too. Just love
and we know they'll love Snorble too. That's why we're here on Indiegogo. We've made real progress bringing Snorble to life. Now, with your support, we can follow through and bring Snorble home to your family and many more for a better bedtime. Thank you. Okay. You know what's funny? I haven't watched that video in so long, and we've met almost all the commitments in the video. There's still a few things that we have on our roadmap that we haven't released yet, even though we shipped the product. But that will also tell you something too. This is a journey. It really is a journey. If you start going down this path, especially as you know, we're all entrepreneurs here. Many of you are, or I should say, some of you are starting to look at your new beginning as an entrepreneurship. It's a really exciting time. It's very challenging. And one of the things that you have to take note is that when you make a public promise to somebody, you want to try to meet that the best way that you can. And that's something that is very important, whether or not it's exactly the way that you intended, but you always try to be a good citizen outward. And that's a big part of it. So a couple things to take note of. You saw the video. So there's the intro, who am I? This is the product. Then we would go through, well, what is it? And what does it do? And then we would show a series of different features that pertain what I believe would actually help a person go, man, I think I kind of like that. Oh, I think I like that a little more. Oh, maybe I'll buy that. And it takes them through that journey. And then we point out also as we go through it, the points of differentiation. So for us, a big one was we are the only product in our category. In fact, one of the only products in this space that can operate with this level of technology offline, right? And I think that that's really important, especially from a privacy and security perspective for families. So all these things become part of the narrative that we give to our that we show to our customers in order for them to convert. Now, this is obviously a very long video. There are many different versions of this, but also there are a lot of little tiny clips that are used in order to bring people over to the fold, so they would pay attention and hopefully purchase. So we pre-sold nearly $200,000 worth of product in 20 days. I've said that a few times, so forgive me, but that is true. And some things we learned, right? So was our messaging effective? Okay, so this is an awesome moment in realization that we are now out in the world, right? We had so many people say, "Oh my God," right? We don't want to be replaced. You're not going to replace me. That's my time with my child, right? Or, hey, this is a Black Mirror episode, or or basically like it's like a realization of the Terminator. We had people saying all these crazy things, and I was like, man, it doesn't even have feet. It can't do any of this. There's no way it's going to do any of this stuff. But it meant that we had a problem with our messaging. And one of the things that we realized, we had this really awesome video, which showed like it tableside, showed Snorble tableside, and the child interacting with it that couldn't get to sleep. And because it was in a darker room, for example, because it was in a darker room, it made it look a little bit scary if there was no volume. But we would always listen to it with the volume on. So these are the things that you're like, oh my God. Now, here's the benefit of that. This was our first go-to market, right? So we learned, okay, boom, that seems to be a bit of an issue. Can we fix that? All right, let's fix it quickly. Let's retest, right? Let's retest in the market. Now, even with that, people bought. That's the good news. They still bought. But those types of learnings, man, like you can't do that all in one shot. You can't do that and just release a product globally. You need to do it in stages. And all the big global companies, even when they release a product, they're not just doing a global launch and throwing it out to the masses, right? They're doing it in setups and stages where they're A/B testing, they're testing their messaging, they're testing out with focus groups, they're doing all those things. So by leveraging the crowdfunding platform to be that, well, that gave us power. That actually allowed us to be more successful, and it's going to allow us to be more successful in terms of our mass market launch. We know the things to avoid, for example, right? Now, testing accessory sales. So here's the thing. Snorble costs a bit of money to make. It's not cheap. It's not a loss leader. We do make money on every single Snorble we sell. However, it's not high margin, right? Now, we have other products within our catalog of products that are better margin. And part of our whole approach from a product perspective that is a bit different is that Snorble acts as a hub, and through that, it connects to other things. So we wanted to see how much affinity the population that purchased Snorble would have to buying secondary products. And 20% of our audience bought an accessory within 5 days of launching, right? Of the 5 days of launching the accessory. So that was a great learning. And now we can include that in terms of our financing plan, our performas that we would present to investors, because we have proven data. right? We have proven data. We sold $200,000 worth of product in 20 days. 20% of the audience bought an accessory, right? And here's how that breaks down financially for you, Mr. Investor, right? Something else we learned, which was kind of funny, is that filming Snorble was very hard, right? So Snorble has a projector for the display, right? So filming a camera with a light source over here with another light source pointing this way is really challenging. And it took an extreme amount of effort to get it to look like it was supposed to look. And even then, it was still a battle, right? So that was a big learning. And it also helped us understand, okay, moving forward, here is the parameters in which we would apply the next film shoot, the next photo shoot. Here are the things that you need to do in order to get the best image of this product, right? Now, here's something that's really important, I think, for anyone that's running a campaign. It's the U-shaped curve of sales. Do you folks know what that is for these Indiegogo campaigns? Probably no, because I don't think any of you ran one before. So here's how it works. When you set up and you basically start to do sales on an Indiegogo, what happens is that all your early adopters come in at the very beginning, and then they buy. And then there's an incredible drop. And for the middle of the campaign, you're basically at the bottom of a U, right, of sales. You're not really selling a lot, and you're spending to get those sales. And then what happens is the campaign starts to close because people are realizing that the window is closing as well. The sales start to pick up a little bit more, right? And part of that is that the early adopters are going to buy anyways. But when you have people in the funnel, it starts off with very little to low sales, some conversion, and then the majority of conversion comes at the bottom of the funnel, which is at the bottom of the campaign. So that was a very interesting aspect that if you realize it, some of the goals are then to increase the bottom of the funnel in order to get sales. So you have to figure out your strategies in the drop in order to keep those sales going, right? And this is the most important thing. See, the reality is that you're selling into a community when you go to these platforms, right? So the number one thing that you want to do is figure out the best way to trigger the algorithm. So you're featured on the front page, you're featured in their pushes, they're doing promotions around you, because that is advertising you do not have to pay for, right? And the way that we did it was we did a couple things. One, we generated out an email list at the very beginning of or before the campaign by about 60 days. And that email list we paid for, social advertising, where we invited people to sign up. And when they signed up, we basically collected all their information. I think we had 40,000 people at the very beginning that just signed up. And the benefit there is that the cost for someone to sign up where they don't have to buy anything is far less. Now we just know that they're interested, right? So those 40,000 people probably cost us, 70 cents to $1 for sign up, which is a very good indicator too that that the product is interesting, right? And then what we did when we launched the campaign was we did a mass push, giving them a countdown for like 3 or 4 days before and reminding them that they could, like, all these different things. Also offering incentive, like, hey, you get the special early bird pricing, you get the special blah, and all these different things in order to drive them to purchase, right? The other things that you can look at, and these are things that are kind of part of these platforms. There's also like sales funnel technology and leveraging that funnel technology. So, for example, on Indiegogo and on Kickstarter, there are applications that you can use. They're cheap, they're inexpensive, which actually create a bit of urgency around the sale. So, for example, if you have 600 units available at the earliest bird pricing, it wouldn't say that. It would say 5 left, and it would just keep incrementally adding those numbers. A lot of people don't know that that is happening, but very much so. Every single campaign or everything that you buy on these platforms, they typically have a way to create urgency, and that's very important. So creating demand before launching, I mentioned it before, the email list and audience development, right? Talking, creating your community, fabricating scarcity. It's the point that I just mentioned about leveraging tools that create demand and scarcity, right? Have a plan around building community. Like, this is where I think a lot of people really get hung up. You're not just putting your product out and hoping people will buy. You are talking to people every single day. You are trying to spark conversation. You're giving them updates and all the wonderful things you're doing. You're doing all the things to bring people into the platform and to purchase. So that really is about being a good citizen and establishing your early customers. And that is an active, continuous process that you will do for the remainder of your career if you're an entrepreneur, right? Organic sales on the platform. So each platform will generate sales to the campaign, but it's not what you think. It's not like you put it on Indiegogo or Kickstarter and you get, $100,000 in sales and you have $110,000 for your campaign, right? It's actually typically 10%. So if you are going to raise $100,000, for us, it was probably even less. I think we had, because our fundamental audience was slightly different than the platforms. I think we probably had about 7%, right? Which is low, right? And those things, and that's really important to know, because you are going to be selling on this platform. You will gain some benefit, but it's almost to the same amount that you will lose on the fees that you're going to pay. So just, you have to realize that. So our investment strategy, was very much about demonstrating results. And you're going to do that whether you're doing a pre-sales campaign, a crowdfunding campaign, or whatever else, right? So, or an equity crowdfunding campaign, sorry. So you just take a look here, right? We have, in this case, we have created an awesome team. My team is the best in the world, right? That's how I feel. And when you have that, it helps establish credibility with investors, right? Then we came up with a concept. We had no prototype here, but we had a lot of people that trusted me because of my background and because they've done work with me before, right? So we intended to raise $500,000. We raised $1 million via an angel round. And that comes from family. It comes from colleagues that you've worked with. It comes from customers that you've worked with. It comes from all those things, and friends. And that's what we did. We raised $1 million to take a crack, to take a shot, a big swing, right? And then we used that funds in order to create a prototype, really dig into the market, make sure that we had a real offering and that our offering really sat well with our customers, right? So independent market research day, all the things that I mentioned, right? And then we launched the crowdfunding campaign, and we demonstrated product market fit. We didn't prove product market fit, we demonstrated it, right? Because it's still early. It's still early adopters, right? Customers went nuts, 200K in pre-sales in 20 days. And then we had brand traction. So again, 5,000 comments and 136,000 points of interaction. See, I got that wrong. 136,000 points of interaction on social, and also some international media coverage. And then with that step, we went and we raised 2 million at a 15 million pre-money valuation, right? And during that raise, we had someone commit $10 million at a 30 million pre-money valuation. So just look at that journey, right? If we had leveraged this 200K, there's no way we could have released that product. You see? So you have to really, really understand the mechanics of your company and your funding needs. So challenges along the way. So this is what people don't talk about, which we're going to talk about right now. Okay, we have a hardware product, right? And literally, we launched the first friends and family round during the pandemic. We raised that capital in 3 months during the height of the pandemic, right? And I was like, okay, I can't believe I'm releasing a product into the world when when people can't even go out and see it. They have to just assume and buy it. It's like, that's a scary thought. No one knew what was going to happen in the world at that time. And then the pandemic yielded the global shipping crisis. A container ship that would cost $2,000 now costed $25,000, right? So your shipping costs are like mind-blowing, boggling, right? And those issues also led to supply chain issues. So the parts that you would get interestingly enough, the parts that you would get for most cars, like these little microchips or microprocessors or whatever, the car companies decide to slow the roll right before the pandemic, and then the pandemic hit, and for whatever reason, they doubled down on production, and then no one could get anything. Certain components would take a year to actually order to put into your product. So that was a crazy learning, crazy, right? Um, and then investors were not able to meet their commitments. So some of the folks that had committed the big 10 million, we only got, I mean, at the time, we only had received a portion of that capital, right? A very, very small portion of that capital. And to no fault of their own, you know, they were going through their own financial challenges because the world had essentially gave everyone a kick in the teeth, right? So horrible learning, very big challenge. And then the recession, right? So imagine now we go through all this and then we hit a recession, right? And during all this, we have to keep our backers, you know, the pre-sales customers, confidence up with a delay of almost 2 years. So these are challenges that are real that you will face in doing anything like this. And again, as I said earlier, would I have done it this exact same way, or would I have waited a little bit before we launched the crowdfunding campaign? I don't know. Looking back, it might have been better to wait. But the truth is that if we had waited, maybe we wouldn't have been able to close the investment. So these are some of the things that you need to think about as part of your strategy, and they're big decisions. You know, you need to put on your big person pants to make those decisions. So I want to go through some of the economics. Okay. Oh, actually, are there any questions? Do we want to answer any questions before I continue forward? No. Okay.
We do have some questions that have come in, Mike, and we're coming up on 1 o'clock here, so I want to be mindful of folks' time. We do have a couple questions, but why don't you go ahead and wrap up, and then we can do questions at the end here.
Okay. Sorry, Steve.
No worries.
So,
all good.
Okay, so for crowdfunding economics, right? Setup. So look, you can do a lot of stuff yourself. You don't have to pay an agency, right? However, it's a good idea to pay an agency, because if you hire an agency that markets specifically for crowdfunding, right? They're going to know the rules of engagement, so you don't get in trouble. They're also going to know what kind of things you can do in order to improve upon that. But then the third thing that they're also going to know, they're also going to be able to leverage, is that if they've marketed to companies that have your similar audience, they're going to be able to leverage those audiences to remarket. And that's something that no one ever talks about. That's probably the biggest value of going to a crowdfunding based agency, right? Now, the marketing collateral, yeah, you could spend 5K to 50K for photos, videos, and copy, even more, depending on what you want to do. Generating a lead list. So generating a lead list could be $1,000 to $50,000, right? But those are really important things. You want to make sure that it's a real lead list. It's not just a list of emails that you bought off of the internet, right? You want to go acquire those leads and make sure they're real, right? Your ad budget is about 10 to 100K, depending on how much you want to sell. And usually it's referred to as your customer acquisition cost. So you could be spending $20 to acquire a customer, which means that after you put $20 into an ad engine, someone buys. Or you could spend $100 to acquire a customer, which means you put $100 in the ad engine and someone buys. You need to keep it consistent, but you also need to understand what your customer acquisition costs are and be really attuned to that, because that is the spread in which you separate profit from spend. Your email campaign. So leading up to setting up and generating a lead list, you could spend 1K to 10K or maybe even more, right? So these are just some numbers here to work with. Breakdown of unit economics, right? So like, for example, if you have $100 product, right? And this is to kind of show you how you got to think about your budgeting and how it works, right? So let's say you have a $100 product. Your landed cost is $35. Your customer acquisition costs are $30 to $50. So 30 low, 50 high, right? Okay. Your fees per platforms are $8, right? Your returns or cancellation costs could be about $4. Shipping is not included. Make sure that, so maybe shipping is on top of, right? Your subtotal there on the low end, thank you. Your subtotal there on the low end, in terms of what you make for yourself, could be $3 a unit. You could do all this, sell $1 million and come away with 30 grand. Imagine, right? On the high end, you could be making $23 a unit. So where you live, especially in product and even for service, you have to live in your unit economics breakdown. That's probably the most important piece. Excuse me. So crowdfunding is a great tool, but you need to be clear on what your goals are, right? The best practice is to really use the tool to hone in on your ability to communicate, understand your audience, and test your theories before investing years of time and hard-earned money. Something I want to call out: when you decide that you want to be an entrepreneur, or if you are an entrepreneur, forgive me for those of you that have a history, it is a journey that you are investing years of your life. In fact, a large part of your life. So you have to make sure that that journey is worth it for you. And that is incredibly important. If it's 10 years of your life before you sell that business, or 8 years before you sell it, or longer, you want to make sure that you're enjoying the journey along the way, but also that the pain that you're going to suffer, which you will, is worth the outcome that you're trying to yield. And that is a personal exercise that everyone should go through before they decide to start a business or to, run one of these crowdfunding campaigns. And that is it. Thank you.
All right, great. Thanks, Mike. A lot of great information in there. We do have a few questions that have come in. So we'll hang on for a few minutes and get to the questions. And if folks have other questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box. Before we dive into that, Kathleen, can you launch the second poll we have? This is to ask any of you if you would like a SCORE mentor. And if you do, answer yes to the second question, and you'll get an email from me telling you how to do that. That is the only email you will get. And if you are not interested in the SCORE mentor, that's fine as well. But definitely can be a great resource for you. So while we let people answer that, Mike, just a quick one. One of the questions we got was how long your video was. I think it was about 4.5 minutes, but I think you mentioned right afterwards that you would almost do smaller clips depending upon the situation you were going to use it for. Is that right?
Yes. So on the crowdfunding platform, because people are looking at buying there, what happens is you do want to probably get within 2.5 to 3 minutes, typically, but you can make it longer for crowdfunding, because crowdfunding is different. You're not sending them to, you're not trying to advertise it on a social campaign where they're doing other things. They're actually there to look at what you're doing, right? So it's okay to have a longer format for those specific platforms.
Okay, great. Kathleen, do you want to take over the questions from there?
I do. I'm going to end with some questions, but because I'm looking for your perspective, some of the questions related to services. So I wanted to tell the audience some experiences that I had, both as a SCORE mentor for one, and the other one was one I invested in. I'll start with the one I invested in. It was a group of women in New York who were going to do a film. I think it was called Go Girl or something like that. That was to empower young girls, especially minorities in New York City. And I was invested in the idea of this film, and they offered certain, because it wasn't a product per se. I mean, they were making a film, but we weren't going to get the film. We were more buying into the message, and that's what some of the people here are about. But they did offer us some sort of rewards depending on what level of investment we made. What I will say about that is it was successful, and I'm sure they raised money in other ways as well, and they made the film. But I thought we were going to get to watch the film. And that was not one of the things they gave us, which completely disappointed me, because I thought, oh, I'll get this cute little whatever PDF, and then they'll let us watch the film. Maybe they'll have a collective watching session for the people who backed it, and they didn't. And I was so bummed out. So if you're offering a service like that, and if it's about your message and people are invested in what you're doing, it's really important to make sure that what you offer them is to participate in the thing in the end. Because otherwise, I was pretty soured, and I can tell you right now, I wouldn't invest with them again.
Yes.
The second one is one of my clients has an app that she's developed that's community based and it's not a pay for app. And so she's looking for funding because she's trying to bring it into schools. So it's kind of like a nonprofit-ish type environment. And she's trying to raise money for the development of the fully fledged app, because right now it's a mini beta version. And she raised almost nothing. And she had an awesome video, et cetera, et cetera. And part of the reason I think is because what she's doing is raising money for something that isn't a tangible product that people are going to buy. So unless they're buying into the message of what it is she's doing, that's what she was really selling them. And I don't know how easy it is to sell that. And I wondered if you could speak to that, because that is some of what people were asking about.
Yeah, it's about knowing your audience. Like, for example, and I have a great example. So this happened to us the other day. We were talking with an investor, right, who kind of outlined that maybe we weren't talking about certain areas that were of interest to him, right? That we actually have in our product. It's, we do this thing, he likes those things, but our presentation is boxed up in a certain way, and I maybe I missed that talking point. So what we found was that you really got to know your audience. Like, if she was if the person, sorry, I think you said it was her, but if the person was basically out promoting this app, and the app had no return on investment, then it's not really investors she's going after, right? She's going after people with a social initiative, you know?
Yes, correct. Which is how she was pitching it.
Yeah.
I
But
think in her case, she just doesn't have enough social media followers.
well,
That are already on board with her thing, so that she didn't have enough people to drive there
let
in the
me
first place.
let me say it this way, right? So, like, think of it this way. It's about first off, knowing your audience, that's for sure. But then it's also about expressing that you can do it. They also have to believe that you can do it, and they also have to believe that the impact is going to have the impact that it's going to have, and
Yep.
they also trust you. So when you're going out to like a general campaign on something that has no return, right? Then you really have, and depending on if the audience that she's talking to knows her or understands her value, which I'm sure she has tons of, right? Those are all considerations, because if I don't know you, like if we don't know each other, the likelihood of me getting money from you, especially when there's no benefit to it, is
Mm-hmm.
far less, right? So part of this, and this is a reality that most of us have, you need to go to people that know you first. A lot of people are like, well, I don't want to ask my family. I was like, really? So you're going to go ask a stranger to give you money, but you won't ask your family? No, 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 no. That's not acceptable, right? You should ask your family. They should be the ones supporting your initiative. You're not asking them to put up their house, right? Or, those type of things, but they should support the initiative. They should show trust, right? And through that, that's how you do it. The second thing is, at that earliest stage, you want to build your trust with others. So you have to invest in relationships. Like, I have an investor that is actually pretty awesome. I talked to him. I met him at an event. We had a couple of great conversations. We went out for coffee. Then we met up again, and then I gave him the presentation. He likes me, right? Then I flew down to meet with him and have dinner with him, right? And then it kind of went quiet, and I was like, okay, well, that's okay, right? It's like, at least I met someone that I enjoy them, right? And then he reached out to me a few days ago. He said, hey, Mike, I think I'm ready to make that commitment. So that's the journey. It's not absolute. It's not like, hey, I put in enough time, now you need to give me your money. This is about relationships. You have to gain trust. And I think that, like, a lot of the things that people don't realize, even from the marketing side, is it's about trust. Like, when you put out a product to somebody else, you're trying to get them to trust you on a first go-to market, because they don't know you. So the advertising, like, everything through is that. And I know I did see one question about that. Like, this sounds more like a marketing campaign, marketing product than seeking funding for a startup. That's actually not true, right? Your job at the very beginning is to market yourself and to promote and to gain trust, right? To be a good citizen, to do all the things. So when people see you in the world, they know that you are a trustworthy person to give them their money, right? In order that you're going to do the very best you can in order to make that a success.
It's been interesting about my client is she's had much more success doing some of those pitch campaigns where it's almost like a grant, but
Yeah.
it's instead of submitting a normal grant form, you actually go and you pitch like you would on Shark Tank to a group of judges and they select people for second and third. She's raised more money that way by pitching herself in person than she did through her crowdfunding campaign. So when people hear the story live, they can relate to it. And so it's something to consider for everyone, is to think about how can you what's going to make your story resonate the most and with whom.
Yes.
Because you totally touched on that. You actually reiterated it a couple of times, Mike. And I think that you saying that is really important because it's all about the story that people are hearing. And is it a story they want to participate in?
Yes, absolutely. Well, and I think that that's really important. Like people want to feel like I have some of the best. I actually really love our investors. We have really, really good people. I'm very blessed that way. And we've been through some big challenges and they've stayed with us and they've supported us. And in fact, most of our investors, this is the other thing, most of our investors have invested in every single round, all three rounds, right? So why? Because I've earned their trust. Our team has earned their trust. We're working our butts off trying to make magic, right? So when if they know that, the likelihood that they will recommit and that they will support us and continue to support us is good. But to your point, when you feel jaded because someone didn't do something that you were expecting or made you feel left out, what's the likelihood of them continuing to support you or to support the program?
Zero.
Yeah, right. So that's part of it. Um, Now I did see one other question here about what if
Yes.
funding you're seeking is for marketing and social media, right? So maybe that is implied that they have a product. Could that be the case? So if they have a
No, I
product
think it's a service.
service, okay. So that's great. If you're looking for marketing dollars if you're looking for dollars towards marketing, you still have to give up a portion of the company in equity, right? Or there has to be some form of um, transfer. So you're not looking for marketing dollars. You're looking to grow the business, right? And the dollars you're bringing in are to use towards a program that's going to grow the business, which happens to be in this case marketing, right? And the reason why that's important is um, it's about how you position it with the individual. If you're talking to an investor, well, then you have a transaction, right? Hey, I've got a business already. I've got a service, right? We're doing X, Y, and Z. We're looking to grow that service and business. Um, we would like you to invest in order to do so, right? So hopefully that answers that question. But you need to understand the audience there.
We have a related question too, where somebody's starting a meal prep service and needs money to fully launch the business.
Um,
When they're thinking about different funding options, this being one, what are some considerations?
Yeah, so there's a couple different things you can do. One, you can do pre-sales for a special offering. So like if it's a meal prep business, maybe it's like, hey, we're going to be launching a certain theme or a certain offering to customer and get them to buy it in advance, right? Or to put down a deposit on it or to do those type things. You might be able to do that directly through your website where you don't have to go raise capital for it. I think the question I would have for this individual is um, have you already proven that there is a market for your business in a way that an investor will want to come in? Investors typically, if you think of it this way, when you think about how they think about this type of program, they're going to say to themselves, well, if I give you $100,000 to do this job, is that going to turn into $1 million in 3 or 4 years? Right. And that question is constantly in the back of their head. That's what they're trying to figure out. So they're trying to say, is this risky? Tell me how it's not risky, right? Is there a real market? Okay, tell me how there's a real market, right? And can you do it? Have you already shown steps that you can do it? Have you already proven somewhat you can do it, right? So depending on what they're trying to do, what I would say is that I would really look at like, do you want to just try to ramp up are you trying to build out the proof that you do have a market, right? In that case, then I wouldn't go to investors right away. I would actually try to create steps towards getting there. Or if do you already have a market, which case then let's go through and then show them and prove that case to the investors.
Great, thanks. Diane has a nonprofit and to benefit the community. So she's wondering how she would use a crowdfunding campaign to raise funds toward the nonprofit, to put toward the nonprofit, basically.
I really love that, by the way. I think that's awesome. So Diane, what I would say is that I would use a GoFundMe for you. That's where my head is going right away.
And that's where hers went to in her first iteration of the question.
I think that's the right way to go. I would go through a GoFundMe. I think that, but part of it is that you need to inspire people about why now is the right time to support this activity, right? So usually for things like GoFundMe's, you need a theme, an area of focus, and something that you can direct and still position all your marketing towards. You remember when I talked about before sleep? It's like we're not a sleep tool. We launched with sleep, but we're not a sleep tool. Same kind of thing. You might want to say like the holiday season or just whatever it is. It's something that you can really drive focus. Like we're trying to prep for this thing. And then those campaigns actually have more ability to succeed, whether or not for GoFundMe's or Kickstarters or whatever.
So Mary's asking, so GoFundMe is the best platform to reach a social type nonprofit audience, correct?
I think so, but I'll tell you though, it depends. Like, so one of the things that's really interesting, I was at a event in Florida, which is really an awesome event that I shouldn't even have been there, I don't think, but it was with a lot of very high net worth people that were really wonderful. And one thing that you'll find is that almost everybody has that part of them where they want to give. Almost everybody, right? The trick in picking the platform is understanding if you're going to be in this case, like GoFundMe, I think would be a good idea. However, sometimes going to where everybody is asking is not. Like, I don't think you're going to get any much value on being on GoFundMe specifically. It's just that is a platform that most people know and respect and will go make donations for, right? You could do it directly yourself and actually, because if you're a real nonprofit, you can get the thing set up to do that, right? And that also is incredibly valuable, but it really is about the messaging. Like I know that's where most people get lost on it. It's like if you know how to tell someone and really create that moment, then yeah, of course they'll support you into some capacity.
Well, and I wanted to tell you, I can't remember the name of it though. So you're going to have to Google this, anybody who's interested. Seth Godin, who is a genius marketer, is on the board of directors or something of this brand new methodology for raising money for nonprofits. So if you Google Seth Godin new nonprofit tools, it's got some weird name. I can't remember what it is, but it's really cool because it's like gamifying raising money for nonprofits where there's an auction and you win stuff. And anyway, it's something to consider as an alternative to GoFundMe. I just thought of it. If I'd thought of it in advance, I would have prepared, but I think it would be worth it to check out. And if I can find it, we will put it in the replay email. If I can't find it, Google it yourself and see if you can get hooked up to something like that because it's a good alternative. It's SETH, Seth Godin, Godin.
All right. I think that is the last of the questions just some thank yous in here. Mike, can't thank you enough for this. This was wonderful. Some great experience that you have had in your career that you were kind enough to take some time and share with us today. So thank you very much for doing that. Everyone, check out Mike's business at snorble.com. Obviously, you can see the great things that they are doing. And check out our YouTube channel if you're looking for more videos on helping you run your business. You can go onto YouTube and search for Greater Hartford Score. And while you are there, please subscribe. Then you'll be notified of future videos that we post. And again, if you're looking for any help in running your business, you can do so at score.org. So with that, we will stop the recording and want to thank everybody for joining today.
Thank you all.